Welcome to the referendum debate. There's just over 5 weeks now until decision time for Scotland. And tonight, we're in Inverness. And on our panel, two MPs from the north of Scotland, key players on either side. Chief Secretary to the Treasury and Liberal Democrat MP Danny Alexander, the Scottish National Party's leader at Westminster and director of its referendum campaign, Angus Robertson MP. And joining them, one of Scotland's leading actors who's campaigning for a yes vote, Ken Stott, the campaign director of Better Together, Blair McDougall, and a panellist who is still undecided on how to vote, columnist for the Inverness Courier, Nicky Marr. As ever, our audience are fired up and ready to go. They are evenly divided between supporters and opponents of independence, and some who, like Nicky, are undecided. Our audience have submitted their questions, and our panel have not seen them. Welcome to Inverness. Ransacked, blown up, burnt to the ground. The turbulent history of this city can be charted by the fate of the castles which have stood here. Guarding the River Ness, this ground has been claimed by Mary Queen of Scots, the Jacobites, and even some say Macbeth. In modern times, the Highland capital has prospered, with economic growth among the fastest in the UK. And words are now the weapons of choice in the battle for the city's loyalties. Represented by the Liberal Democrats and the Scottish National Party, this is also a city with a history of support for the Conservatives and Labour. So whose words will win the battle for Scotland's future? Let's get going. Our first question tonight is from Andrew Bruce. Andrew.
Is there really any need for a Plan B alternative to currency union?
Is there any need for a Plan B alternative to currency union? Of course, the Yes campaign say that Scotland would share sterling with the rest of the UK. The No campaign say that wouldn't happen. Angus Robertson.
Well, of course, there are a range of options, and those options have been looked at in great detail in an advisory group to the Scottish Government. The report is more than 300 pages long. It goes through all the options. But the best option for Scotland after a yes vote is a continuing currency union. It's to the advantage of Scotland, Scotland's economy. It's also to the advantage of the economy of the rest of the UK. And for that reason, it seems eminently sensible that after a yes vote, there is a currency union. And we also know that senior people on no side also agree that that's what's likely to happen, because we were able to read it across the front page of the Guardian newspaper, the senior minister saying that a currency union is indeed what would happen. The threats that we are hearing from the no side are all to try and scare people who are undecided or not certain about whether they should vote yes.
Danny Alexander.
I think there is a real need for the Yes campaign, for the SNP to set out what the real currency plan is for an independent Scotland, because we know that a currency union isn't going to happen. It won't be agreed by the rest of the United Kingdom, let alone work for Scotland. And frankly, I think that the idea that if you are advocating a change as big, as long-lasting as independence, and you can't answer the question, as Alistair Downing said the other night, basic things that any child studying geography would know about a country. What's its name, what's its capital city, what's its currency? And you can't spell out to people who you're expecting to vote for this change what the currency situation is going to be, then I think that you are really letting those voters down. Now, I might say, well, that's fine. Go on, keep going the Yes campaign, not being able to answer the crucial questions that people have. But I think voters deserve better than that in a debate like this.
Let's take a couple of points from the floor. Yes, the woman on the end.
Thank you. I'd like to ask Danny Alexander, if there is a yes vote, would he then be supporting a currency union?
I think it's Councillor Liz MacDonald, is it the SNP councillor from Nairn who's asking the question? And no, I won't be, because I think that a currency union wouldn't work for an independent Scotland. I think that if you join a currency union, what you're doing is you are giving up the ability to set your own interest rates. You're giving up your ability to have a currency that moves in value according to your own economy. and in a country that would be much more dependent on oil and gas, where the price fluctuates day by day, as we know, that would have a big effect on our economy, yet we couldn't adjust. And, as we've seen from the Eurozone, in a currency union, you'd have to bind your hands on tax and spending. So in many ways, Scotland would have, under those arrangements, less economic freedom, less economic sovereignty, less ability to affect our own economic destiny than we have at the moment.
OK, a couple more points. Yes, the man in the blue shirt down the front. Yes.
Angus, as you keep banging on about the unknown minister in The Guardian so much, do you think you could name him, please?
Oh, I think... I think
you
there
can't,
are,
can you?
well,
I mean, in a word.
The Guardian journalist who wrote the story hasn't confirmed who it was, but nobody from the no side, as far as I'm aware, is disputing that the comments were made. But it's more than just him. There are coalition MPs like Gito Bebb, who's a Conservative member from Wales, who said that a currency union is likely. Like Danny, I work in the House of Commons every week. I speak to a lot of MPs from different parts of the UK, and in private, a great many of them are saying, of course there would be a currency union. And why wouldn't there be? It makes sense for Scotland, it makes sense for the rest of the UK. And while we're on the issue of plans B and plans A, perhaps we'll have time to come to it later, no doubt, but why is it that we haven't even had a plan A from the no side as to what will happen to the governance of Scotland if there were to be a no result?
Let's stick to currency just now. Nicky Marr. The question was, is there really any need for a Plan B alternative to currency union?
I'm actually very disappointed that we need a Plan B at all, because I would have hoped that by the time you're asking the people of Scotland to make a decision, we would know exactly what we're getting ourselves into if Scotland is to become an independent country.
Well, Ken Stott, do we know what we're getting ourselves into? Is there a need for this Plan B?
Plan B is, I'm afraid, it's the brainchild of the No campaign, and I believe it's going to be the death of the No campaign, because what they are doing is demanding, it's a ridiculous demand. We know that Scotland will use the pound afterwards. We know the Fiscal Commission group has clearly stated that it's a goer. We will be using the pound. Now, what will happen in the end, I suspect, is that we will get the pound, and Messrs. Alexander and Osborne, Darling and Balls will receive a P45.
Blair McDougall, your boss, Alistair Darling, the leader of your campaign, has described a currency union as desirable and logical. So why do we need a plan B?
Well, what he said was it's desirable and logical to share a currency when you have a political and economic union, which is exactly what the SNP suggest dissolving.
If you have independence or separation, of course the currency union is logical.
And he goes on to say, the entire quote is actually on my Twitter feed, and people can go and look at it. He goes on to say that leads you immediately back to political and fiscal union, which is what the SNP are picking apart. What I think is really interesting this week is that after Alex Salmond came unstuck in that debate, where 1 million of us watched in our living rooms him repeatedly refusing to answer what the Plan B was, they've gone on to saying a version of actually what Ken just said, which is that what currency we use almost doesn't matter. Well, it does matter, because it's people's wages, it's people's pensions, it's people's jobs that we're talking about here. And the really interesting thing for me is today the SNP published a document where they promised the biggest corporations in the world a 3% tax cut. If you get in a private plane and you're a corporate executive, you get straight answers from the SNP. If you're getting on a bus in South Keswick, if you're getting on a bus in Govan, if you're getting on a bus in Edinburgh, you get no straight answers from them. This is people's livelihoods, people's jobs that we're dealing with here. It's about what's in our pay packet. If this does matter, and just brushing it aside for the next 6 weeks is not going to be good enough for the SNP. People want an answer to this question.
OK, let's see what answers people on the floor then. Let's go to the man here in the black top. Yeah.
I just think from the Better Together campaign, this is a great tactic in order to develop fear amongst people. Because we all know within politics, there is never yes or no. It always comes down to a negotiation on all levels. You just have to look at the negotiations that took place, what was it, for the situation in Northern Ireland with the troubles there. They've come about to a more steady situation by negotiation, by both sides giving away things that you would have gone, no, we'll never have.
And you think that would happen if Scotland voted yes?
Happen,
All right,
because
thank
that
you.
is politics.
Thank you very much. The man here.
I think it's fairly simple. At the end of this, if it's a yes vote, the pound will be used. Now, whether it's used within a currency union or out with a currency union seems to be an issue which is particularly important to the Better Together people. But for the man in the street, the man getting the bus to Keswick, the man getting the bus in Govan, he will use the pound. Because the pound is acceptable. It's an internationally traded currency. I know for a fact that I can use the pound abroad in other countries. I can use foreign currencies in this country. It's not a question of whether it's a currency union or not. It's a question of whether people will accept the money you're offered.
Thank you. Let's put that to Danny Alexander.
Well, what the gentleman who's just spoken has given us is one of the clearest articulations we've heard yet of a possible Plan B. And that Plan B is that you don't have a currency union, and therefore we don't have in Scotland a central bank. We don't have the lender of last resort. We don't have the support for businesses, for financial services, and so on in Scotland. Now, you're quite right. There are some countries around the world who do precisely what you have said. For example, Panama uses the US dollar. It chooses not to have its own currency.
Is Panama a disaster? But you always quote Panama. Is it failing? Is it catastrophic?
No. I'm not criticising Panama. I'm just
what's
saying,
your point, then?
I would just say that I'm not sure that...
in the world.
I'm not...
It's just small and rubbish.
No, it's not. But I also don't think it's the sort of economy that we aspire to have in Scotland.
Right,
because let me just answer. Let me just finish the point.
Briefly, and then we'll go to Angus.
Having your own central bank is important to a country that has a major financial services sector, that has large businesses in fields like energy, oil and gas and so on. It really does matter to the employment of hundreds of thousands of people here in Scotland that we do have our own central bank. And frankly, that's why sterlingisation, the option you're describing, is one that would be a disaster economically.
Angus, why can't you accept that that is your Plan B? I mean, if they do not agree to a currency union, it is your Plan B, isn't it?
What we've seen,
why don't you just accept
what
it?
we've seen so far on this programme is the no case losing the argument, and you can hear it from the response of the audience. The pound is Scotland's currency. There is no way that that can be denied to us in Scotland. And why on earth should we be listening? Why on earth should we be taking... I'm sorry, forgive me.
Does that mean that gentleman is speaking for your Plan B?
Forgive me a second. The credibility of the Lib Dem pledges and manifesto pledges when it comes to tuition fees. We will take no lectures. We will take no lectures on the future of Scotland from the Lib Dems. Sterling, as I have pointed out, this weighty document has all of the options that Scotland has before it. I would encourage the audience here, the audience at home, to read what's in it. There are options for Scotland.
But it's a multiple choice referendum. We can have whichever option you choose.
Heckling doesn't make you more persuasive, Danny.
Answering does.
Heckling does not. Just saying, will you let me speak? Will you let me speak?
Giving people a straight
will you let me speak? Will you let me speak?
Hang on. Wait, make your point, Danny Alexander, in one sentence, and then we'll go to Angus, and then I'd really like to hear what Nicky has to say about all of this.
If Angus accepts that sterlingisation, the option the gentleman earlier described as his Plan B, it'd be good to say so. That would certainly make the case he makes more persuasive.
Can you answer it in a
the options that Scotland have are in the working group paper. They are there. The best option for Scotland is to remain within a currency arrangement with the rest of the United Kingdom. Right. It is absolutely so. But what we have seen so far is the No campaign being exposed for what it is, just trying to engender fear into the electorate so that you do not vote yes. They have been exposed. You in the audience, you at home, you know that Scotland will continue to use the pound. And when talking about Plan A's and Plan B's, how long do we have to wait for the No campaign to come out with their Plan A for what the future is of Scotland should there be a no vote?
Thank you. Nicky Marr, you're undecided. What do you make of all this shouting?
There's a lot of shouting. I have teenagers, so it's something I'm very used to, and I'm quite robust at standing up to it. But what I would say is I am disappointed that this hasn't been thrashed out before. I'm disappointed that what we're actually voting on in 5 or 6 weeks' time isn't, do we want an independent Scotland? It's, do you want us to enter into negotiations for an independent Scotland? The next 18 months could then be spent setting out the terms of that contract, and then it could be presented to the people of Scotland, and we can then decide. I don't think I'm ready on the basis of frankly, you two argy-bargying with each other, I don't know who to believe. I don't know who to believe.
OK, thank you. No, thank you very much. Let's just say it's a good moment to remind you that you can join tonight's debate on Twitter using the BBC IndieRef hashtag, and you can also email us at referendumdebate@bbc.co.uk. You can text us on 80295, and you can go to the BBC Scotland News website to see a selection of your comments. Let's just come back to this currency question, though. Ken Stott, is there not a case that Scotland would have more freedom if it had its own currency?
Well, I'm not a politician, and I'm not an economist. I can foresee a time where Scotland would have its own currency. I believe it happened with New Zealand, it happened with Australia, it happened with Canada, with Ireland, and I don't see why it cannot happen here. But
should it happen here? I mean, if interest rates are going to be controlled by the Bank of England if there's a formal currency union, or if you have no central bank if there's not, is it not a better idea to have our own currency?
Well, again, I have to refer you to the Fiscal Commission, the working group. But what I would say...
You spent too much time with Angus. What's your gut? What's your feeling? Genuinely, don't you think Scotland should have its own currency?
I think Scotland needs to take its time to find its feet in a new world, and using the pound is the obvious and clear. And let's face it, it suits both parties to do so.
Right. Let's take some views. We'll come to the man on the end here. Yes, sir, on the end.
It's very easy to call someone's bluff, but very dangerous to get it wrong. So without the Bank of England, who exactly will be setting the base rates for mortgages, credit cards, savings accounts and current accounts?
OK, thank you. We'll come to the man, right in the middle.
This is debate all pretty irrelevant if you've got to accept the euro.
Why do we have to accept the euro?
If the EU imposes the euro on you.
Because in terms of joining conditions.
In terms of joining.
OK, thank you. We haven't talked much about the euro. Let's go over here first. The man just here, with the blue shirt. Yes.
I think the No campaign haven't really understood the nature of negotiation, because Scotland isn't devoid of bargaining chips. For instance, the timing of how quickly Trident is removed from Scottish waters will be a very big bargaining chip, and Scotland taking its own share of the debt will be another one. Now, if they want to encumber themselves, that's fine. They can stick to their position and have their pound to themselves, and we will have no debt and no nuclear submarines in short order.
Thank you. Now we'll maybe leave it on that question for there. Thank you very much indeed. Let's go to the next question now from Frank Brown. Frank.
Yes. Does a no vote threaten the very existence of the NHS in Scotland?
Ken Stott.
It most certainly does. Because what will happen, if we vote yes, if the country votes yes, then we will have the opportunity to forge our own future. If you vote no, that is an end to you saying, well, I didn't vote for that. That wasn't what I voted for. Because actually what you will have done by voting no, you will have given powers to Westminster to do exactly what they like, forever.
The argument is, of course, that the NHS is devolved, so it's protected. Ken.
But Westminster powers will supersede that.
It's all about it's all about the money. If the NHS is being privatised, as it is beginning to be in England, and I'm very sorry for people in England who are going to have to face that prospect. Thank goodness we have our own National Health Service in Scotland, which isn't being privatised in the same way. But there is a financial impact of privatisation in England. Should there be more privatisation, that has an impact through the Barnett formula on how much of our own money we get back. So yes, there is an impact of voting no in the referendum on devolved areas of responsibility of the Scottish Parliament. So a no vote does endanger the NHS in Scotland. There's a very, very strong reason why people should be voting yes to protect the NHS in Scotland.
Essentially, the argument being, if you shrink the state in the rest of the UK, you'll end up shrinking the state in Scotland. Why is that not the case? Surely that will happen.
It would be true if England were introducing a system of private health insurance. They're not. They're private contractors, but they're still funded by general taxation, so it doesn't affect the funding of the NHS in Scotland a jot. Now, a month ago, we had this argument because some of the UK's leading medical researchers came out and said that they were worried about the impact of a yes vote on the NHS. And in response to that story, the response from the SNP government was, don't worry, the NHS is 100% devolved to Scotland. That's the truth. Okay? We make our own decisions on the NHS. I think the real risk to the NHS is unpicking that research base that goes into our medical research, that's in universities all over Scotland, that's finding cures to some of the diseases that we have to fight, fantastic work in places like Dundee. But it's also the £6 billion of cuts that the Independent Institute of Fiscal Studies, which is quoted in Angus's white paper as a source, have predicted we need to make over and above any cuts we need to stay in the UK. This is the Yes campaign basing their entire campaign on saying that something that is already devolved is a case for voting for independence. Okay. We already control our own NHS.
We'll take the man in the middle, shaking his head.
Yeah, the NHS may well be devolved and it may well be protected, but that's at the moment while we have control of our own finances within the Barnett formula, as Angus said. The second, the threat of us taking control of our own resources is gone and we vote no, watch the cuts come. And we won't be able to protect our NHS the way it is at the moment.
OK, we'll come to the man in green. Yeah.
If votes no, then the Barnett formula is going to cut by £4.5 billion. That's going to have an effect on our NHS.
OK. A lot of voices in favour of independence. Keep your hand up for a second if you oppose independence, and I'll take... Oh, the man. We have one who wants to speak up the back with the glasses. So what's your point on this, on the NHS?
I just find it extraordinary that the No campaign is accused of scaremongering, and this is the biggest scare of all. To pretend that something that is completely devolved is affected at all. And what you haven't talked about is the risk to research and all the other organisations that we share across the UK, and we might lose some of that. You don't talk about that. I just find it extraordinary.
Nicky Marr.
Given that I haven't decided yet, I would sincerely hope not. I'm a fairly enthusiastic consumer of the NHS. I like that I get my dental work pretty well free. I like that my eyes are tested free, and anytime I go to see my GP or have to be admitted to hospital, that's all free of charge to me at the point of entry. What I am concerned about is things like Thomas was mentioning just there about research. What about Cancer Research UK? I mean, we all donate, we all run the Race for Life, we all donate to a UK charity. Where does the cut-off point come there? And how does Scotland benefit from that?
And what about on this issue of potentially the budget for the rest of the UK shrinking and therefore the Scottish budget shrinking? Is that a concern for you?
Well, you see, I wondered about that because I thought that Danny was going to give us some more tax-raising powers in Scotland if it is a no, so we might have a little bit more money then. But if it is a yes, then we don't have to pay for the House of Lords and Trident, so we could use some of that money there.
You're
there you have it, there's no money either way.
Danny Alexander, I mean, seriously, can you explain to me why, if there is this Tory-led privatisation agenda of the health service, arguably it's going in that direction, why doesn't that have a knock-on effect on Scotland's funding? It must do. If the Tory government is committed to shrinking the state, it must have a knock-on, surely.
Well, the gentleman who spoke in the audience just now, I think, had it exactly right. This is one of the most appalling scare stories from a No campaign that is so desperate because it is losing the argument. The National Health Service responsibility.
No, we understand that.
Responsibility for the National Health Service in Scotland is 100% the responsibility of the Scottish government.
No, we understand that. The question's about funding,
the
question's more subtle than that.
The question is about funding. And the National Health Service in England is not being privatised. 95% of the National Health Service in England is provided by public sector organisations. The National Health Service in Scotland also uses private contractors from time to time, as they do in England. The biggest threat, I think, to the funding of the National Health Service is the fact that under independence we would see our resources dwindle as tax revenues from oil revenues decline. We'd see the cost of an ageing population rise. And so, as the Institute for Fiscal Studies said, as Blair McDougall was referring to, we'd actually have more pressure on the nation's finances in an independent Scotland than we do at the moment. So if what you're worried about is the resources to pay for the National Health Service, you should be voting no and not yes.
OK, thank you. We'll go to the man, one in.
I also make use of the National Health Service, and I understand there are probably treatments available for the paranoia which people here seem to be suffering from, in saying that there would be damage to the National Health Service if we stayed as part of the United Kingdom. It is nonsense to say that the National Health Service in England has been privatised. It is simply not true. The National Health Service is a wonderful organisation, but it should not be left unchanged. It needs to be modernised. It needs to be looked at. It is complete nonsense to say that it would disappear in Scotland if we were to remain part of the Union.
Thank you. We'll come to the woman near the back. Yep.
Can you explain when the Barnett formula is allocated to Scotland, yes, we can spend it as we wish, but with the spiralling debt of the Westminster government, is that Barnett formula not going to have to shrink? Therefore, Scotland receives less in the future?
Blair McDougall.
So there's two things happening. The Barnett formula has abided for generations because it works. It works. We get £1,200 higher public spending per head in Scotland than the UK average. That works. I'm always sort of slightly amused when I hear nationalists saying that the Barnett formula is at threat, when the only threat to the Barnett formula is leaving the United Kingdom and unpicking that funding. But the point I make about your question is that again, going back to the Institute for Fiscal Studies, not just in the first year of independence, but going forward a generation, they've looked at the figures and found that we would face bigger challenges alone than we would as part of the bigger United Kingdom. Now, our argument is that we can get the best of both worlds. We can have that stability and that funding as being part of something bigger, but the additional tax-raising powers that are coming to Scotland that we actually already have and have never used yet in Scotland, if we wanted to raise them and to put more money into the NHS, we could do that as well. It's up to us.
So firstly, I would very rarely do this, but I would refer you to page 72 of the last Liberal Democrat manifesto written by one D. Alexander, which pledges to get rid of the Barnett formula, as did the Strathclyde Commission advising the Conservative Party on the future funding of Scotland. There is a very real threat. It exists. I'm very interested about this best of both worlds and the stability argument. I don't want the stability of a privatised NHS, of food banks going up by 400%. I want a different Scotland. The way we get a different Scotland is to make better decisions, and who are the best placed people to make decisions about the future of Scotland? It's us, the people of this country.
OK, we'll go to, first of all, the woman right at the back in the pale top. Yes.
My problem with Westminster, and I'm not particularly pro the Yes campaign either, but my problem with Westminster is that they have absolutely no idea about what it's like to live up really in the north of Scotland, away from all the cities and the towns and the services. They have absolutely no idea, and they aren't catering for us.
Thank you. Thank you very much. The man in the check. The man in check. Just here. Yes.
Yeah, Angus seems to be pretty keen to pick out points from the Lib Debs manifesto and dismantle them. Why did Alex Salmond claim the triple lock idea as his own on the debate the other night, when that was a Lib Dem idea that they've put through government already?
Whoever's idea it is, it's a tremendous idea, and we should be using it for pensions in Scotland. It's something we can do with the powers of independence. It's something that hasn't been delivered at Westminster.
But my understanding of it, at least, is that it's already being used at the moment.
Correct.
And yeah,
Okay.
so he basically.
It was promised. The gentleman's right. It was promised in the Liberal Democrat manifesto, been delivered by the coalition government, and it's meaning that pensions are protected in line with earnings, as they should have been all the time, but was turned away by the.
I see. We've all got our copies of the Lib Dem manifesto with us tonight.
Angus has got a pile of documents.
Pensions in the UK are the fourth worst in the European Union.
We'll
it's not something to be proud of.
The woman at the back, yes, in blue.
I have to say I really fear for the undecided voter at this stage, 5 weeks before the referendum, in that I feel like people are really going to make a decision based on negatives that are being slung by either party and not the positives for them in an independent or a non-independent Scotland. I really fear for those voters.
I suspect you're not alone.
On that note, let's take our next question from Blair Allen. Blair Allen.
Has Boris Johnson let the Westminster cat out of the bag with no more powers for Scotland?
OK, this is the Mayor of London, Conservative, who says he's going to stand for Parliament in the next election. Alex Salmond has been thrashed in these debates, he said, referring to the STV debate, but for no reason. We are promising the Scots more tax-raising powers. There's no need, he says. No need. Danny Alexander, has he let the cat out of the bag?
Well, Boris Johnson is entitled to his opinion. He has an opinion on almost everything, sometimes more than one opinion on many things. But the truth is that the Liberal Democrats, the Labour Party and the Conservative Party have all made very clear pledges about more powers for the Scottish Parliament. Not just made clear pledges, but in the case of the Scotland Act passed just 2 years ago, made changes that will mean that every person in this room from April 2016 will be paying a Scottish rate of income tax. I don't know how many of you knew that, but you'll all be paying a separate rate of income tax that will help to fund the work of the Scottish Parliament. As of next April, if you buy a house in Inverness, you will not pay stamp duty. Instead, you'll pay a new Scottish land and buildings transaction tax because that power has already been devolved. That money, again, will go to help fund the work of the Scottish Government. What I would like to see, what my party would like to see, is complete devolution of income tax to be the responsibility of the Scottish Parliament, devolution of inheritance tax, devolution of capital gains tax, additional borrowing powers for the Scottish Parliament beyond those which we've already legislated for. To ensure that we have a Home Rule Parliament for Scotland. That's been the Liberal Democrat vision since long before the SNP was even founded, and we've delivered on it in this Parliament.
The question was, has Boris Johnson, has he let the Westminster cat out of the bag on no further powers for Scotland? Ken Stott.
Well, I think it's pretty clear that what will happen after a no vote is that Scotland will disappear off the agenda, and Scotland will be told to quite simply shut up. Well, after a yes vote, after a yes vote, we take responsibility. We take responsibility for our own affairs. The question is, do you want to be governed? Do you want to be governed carefully in Scotland, or do you want to be ruled from England?
OK, let's go to the man, the man in the green jumper. Yeah.
Okay. Angus Robertson quoted Tom Strathclyde's report. I'm sure he's read all 19 pages of it. It's quite concise, and it says that tax-raising powers, should there be a no vote, will be moved to Edinburgh, all apart from two specific areas, but all taxation powers relating to income.
So your answer to the question, has Boris Johnson let the Westminster cat out of the bag, is no, he hasn't.
Well, hold on. I don't think Boris Johnson is actually in the Scottish Parliament, and I don't think he's also part of the Scottish Conservative Party or part of the decision-making for the Scottish Conservatives. Now, my point is that Strathclyde has made these recommendations. It's up to Scotland to embrace them and move forward with them, because at the moment what's happening is quite simple, is that everything is blamed on Westminster because there are no tax-raising powers used in Scotland, and they can blame Westminster for all the faults that they have with the current system. And it's not acceptable.
I think in this context it's important not to forget an important fact, which is the UK parties were asked if they wished to have a preferred option on the ballot paper. They could have presented one, they could have done their homework, but they didn't. In contrast, the Scottish Government produced a white paper. This single piece of paper is the length of Plan A for the UK political parties. If you vote no, this is the only detail you have of what is heading down the road, and the electorate deserves more than that.
Okay, the gentleman would like to come back on that. The man would like to come back on that.
Absolutely nonsense, Angus. I've read Scotland's future, and I also can say that I've looked at the costings for it. Now, the First Minister has suggested that the costings for setting up an independent Scotland would be £200 million. It cost £140 million to set up a central police force.
Okay.
Now, that paper can't be quoted as the Bible. It's not the Bible, it's an SNP manifesto.
Okay, thank you, thank you. I will have to leave that for the minute because I want to stay on where we are. And the woman in white, the white jacket, yes.
All I can say is thank goodness Boris Johnson is saying these things because it will make more people in Scotland vote yes.
Okay, and we'll come to the man in the middle with the blue stripes.
Yeah, they're already looking for a safe seat for Boris Johnson, and his next move after that is the Conservatives are looking to actually have him as Prime Minister. And it won't be less powers for Scotland, it will be hardly any at all.
I think Boris Johnson's a clown. I don't think he's not even an MP, let alone Prime Minister at the moment. And it's interesting, I've heard this argument from nationalists that Boris Johnson is going to be leader of the Conservatives. Well, the only way that will happen is if David Cameron loses the next election. So, yes, need to work out which scare story is it. Is it going to be a Conservative victory at the general election, or is it going to be Boris Johnson as leader of the Conservative Party?
It's inconceivable to you that Boris Johnson might eventually lead the Conservative Party?
I can't imagine that a serious political party would elect Boris Johnson as leader. But that's for them to decide. But I think it's interesting that Ken is here tonight. I was saying to him, I was watching him in The Hobbit the other night. The Hobbit is about as thick as this and about as believable as this document is. Because everything we've heard tonight says that these terrible people south of the border, we can't work with them, we can't trust them. But don't worry, on the 19th of September they'll be really reasonable and they'll give us a currency union. I mean, come on, which is it?
Ken Stott.
Well, that's not what you said to me earlier, but... well,
it's a good stand-up comment.
Absolutely. Well, I don't know what to say. You know, it's...
It's as thick and as believable as The Hobbit. Scotland's future.
Well,
Scotland's
future is not necessarily unlike many, many other countries. The idea of independence from Britain is hardly new. 300 million Americans salute the flag of independence every day, and they would agree that it's possible to achieve independence, although they did it with a war of independence. Scotland proposes to do it in a different way, in a peaceful way. And we might perhaps take our model, countries like Malta, Kuwait, Bahrain, St. Lucia, Canada, New Zealand, Australia, and many more. It's not new to gain independence from Britain, and most of those countries are doing very well indeed.
Okay. I want to come to Nicky Marr first and then Danny Alexander. So, Nicky Marr first of all. The question was, has Boris Johnson let the cat out of the bag?
Do you know what? I don't pay the blindest bit of attention to Boris Johnson. He was... When I think of Boris Johnson, I think of the man who said of the 2012 Olympics, whiff waff is coming home. And then I think of him as suspended from a zip wire. I'm intrigued, though, by what Ken was saying. We have to make a decision as to whether we're governed carefully from Scotland or ruled from England. And without putting the sort of emphasis that you have on it, I mean, that is, in essence, the question. What I would like to ask Danny, and I appreciate that I'm on the panel and not in the audience, but these powers... I know they do, I'm always asking questions. But these powers that you've suggested, and these extra income tax and other tax-raising powers that Scotland is being given, are they being given, or are they being given conditionally, and can they be taken away?
They can be taken away, can't they?
So in the case of the powers I mentioned, they've already been legislated for. That bill has passed the House of Commons with the support of almost every member of Parliament, of all the parties. I think Angus voted for them, and his party voted for them as well.
But there's no prospect
of those being overturned. The future promises have again been made by all of the major parties. I don't think there's any doubt that there will be further devolution of powers to Scotland. Actually, the point I wanted to pick up on, if I may, James, was Ken made the point about being governed carefully within Scotland. I have to say, I'm not convinced that those of us here in the Highlands who've seen armed police officers on the streets, who are seeing average speed cameras on the A9, who are seeing Northern Constabulary abolished and Police Scotland coming in, taking over those things, who've seen Highlands and Isles enterprise that was able to take decisions about the economy here in the Highlands emasculated by the SNP government, feel particularly well governed by the SNP government in Edinburgh at the moment.
Yes, the man right down the front, yes.
Yeah, so far you have given us the poll tax and the bedroom tax. How many more taxes are you going to give us?
I haven't given you those things, but...
OK, we'll come to the man here in the striped shirt, in the second row, yes.
Yes, with the enactment of Parliament in Edinburgh 8-10 years ago, the Scottish nationalists had the power to raise or lower tax in Scotland by 3%. Not only have they never used it, they allowed that right to be wiped from the slate. Okay, answer that one.
So at the present time in devolution, there is the opportunity to vary income tax rates. But because of the way the financing of the Scottish Parliament works, any net gain that would be made by making a decision to vary income tax or that way is not then credited to the Scottish Parliament and the Scottish Government. This is a whole point about completing the powers of the Scottish Parliament, making sure that our government has the powers of a normal country when it comes to its finances, but also to the economy. That is what's on offer. More powers guaranteed by a yes vote or a no vote, and you have no idea what you're going to get.
OK. So why
for the reason I just explained. The choice on the 18th of September is whether we complete the powers of the Scottish Parliament so we have all the powers of a normal country. If we want those responsibilities, and I do, we all need to vote yes.
OK, we'll go to the woman in black.
I think one of the issues I have has very much come out in this question. I know pretty much what the Yes campaign are offering. I know what the position will be if the Yes campaign is. I'm an undecided voter, and I would very, very much like to have more facts about what will happen if I vote no. And I think that's a real stumbling block for me. So please, can you tell us more facts about what will happen if we vote no?
Do you agree with that, Nikki?
I'm actually the other way round. I kind of feel as though I need to know more. I mean, I am undecided, but I worry that because I don't have enough information as to what a new independent Scotland will be, I worry that I will have to, for safety's sake, vote no.
But does that imply that you would rather vote yes if you had more information?
For me, it's a head and heart thing. I love the idea of being an independent Scotland. I'm a proud Scot. I brought my children up here. I live here. I love it. And I can see that, you know, Canada has prospered and so has Australia. And I also see that everywhere else in the world there are countries who are fighting. There are people who are laying down their lives to get independence. And we're being offered the chance just to put a cross in a box. But yet I don't know what I'm saying yes to if I'm saying yes.
OK, we'll go to the man in the open shirt, the white shirt. Yeah.
As I understand it, the question is not whether we're going to be governed by the SNP or Alex Salmond or Danny Alexander's party or the Conservatives. It's whether we've got enough faith in ourselves as a country to decide how we...
Nikki, briefly, and then Danny.
But I look at our Scottish politicians, and without being rude, and I know this is going to sound terribly rude, who is going to be in charge? Who is actually going to govern our country? The whole raison d'etre, it seems to me, of the SNP disappears if independence is granted. So where do we go? All the political heavyweight brains seem to gravitate south of the border. I don't know who is left to run Scotland.
Thank goodness somebody cried. We'll come down the front to the man in the front.
I was going to say, Nikki, that I think you're making a very reasonable point, but you have to ask yourself, who was it who refused to pre-negotiate and who refused to put an option for Devo Max on the ballot paper? It was the British government. Okay. So that's why the uncertainty.
Danny Alexander.
Well, I'm just going to say to the gentleman in the open neck shirt there who asked the question before last, I don't think it's that question at all. I love Scotland. I'm proud of Scotland. I'm a Highlander born and raised, and I'm going to vote no because I believe that is the best thing for my country. I believe it's the best thing to ensure the prosperity of the people in this country, to ensure Scotland remains strong, to ensure that we have the best of both worlds within the United Kingdom. I think you can be just as proud and just as passionate about the Highlands and about Scotland and vote yes or no. It's not about national identity, it's about taking a rational decision about what is the right way forward for our country.
All right, thank you. On the issue of prosperity, then, let's take the next question, which comes from Deirdre Faulkner. Deirdre Faulkner.
Social media is rife with the rumour at the moment of a massive oil find in the Clearfield off the coast of Shetland. Can you confirm this? And if so, what are the implications for the UK and for an independent Scotland?
So, Danny Alexander, are these rumours true?
There is no massive new oil find that is being kept secret somehow until after the referendum. There are new oil discoveries being made all the time. They are made public. In many cases, as in West of Shetland, not only have they been made public, but the UK government has provided substantial tax allowances to enable those oil fields to be exploited.
How do you define massive? Because you said there's no massive new oil find. How massive is massive?
The nonsense on social media is there's somehow some great find that that is being kept secret until after the referendum.
Is this definitively wrong? No,
it is definitively wrong. It is definitively wrong. There are lots of potential oil fields and actual oil fields to the west of Shetland, which are being explored, where tax breaks have been offered to enable the companies to make the large investments to get that oil out of the ground. The issue about oil is not whether we want to get the maximum possible out of the North Sea and out of west of Shetland and the UK continental shelf. The issue is that whatever happens, oil and gas is a declining resource. The tax revenue we get from North Sea oil and gas is declining rapidly. It's £3 billion a year lower than the SNP forecast, and that drives a massive hole in the fictitious predictions of the public finances of independent Scotland that are in that white paper.
Thank you. Angus Robertson, do you subscribe to these claims? They're initially made on a pro-independence website called Yes International. Do you subscribe to them? Do you think they're true? Do you have any evidence for them?
I haven't seen those reports, but what I do know is that there's been a record amount of investment in the Scottish sector of the North Sea, because it is still very, very important to our economy. The value of oil and gas from the North Sea is as much has already been extracted. But where I part company from Danny, so we're both agreeing that Scotland is a wealthy country, I just take the view that we should be a wealthy society as well. And one of the ways in which one of the ways I part company from Danny is I think that I have a hope for an independent Scotland that treats the weakest in our society in an appropriate way, and that means we do not penalise the disabled with a bedroom tax.
All right,
that we do not have people depending on food banks. These are the choices that we have in September. More of the status quo with no certainty, no plan A of future powers for Scotland, or we have the opportunity of a Scotland where we are able to make better decisions closer to home.
Just on oil then, Ken Stott, the suggestion is there's a source quoted by this website saying that the test drilling in this Clare Ridge project off Shetland had far exceeded expectations. Do you think there's something in this, or do you think?
Well, I saw a photograph and read an article that said that David Cameron had made a special visit to Shetland. When the British government was asked, there was no response. There was more than that. There was absolute silence. That's all I know. Now, you look into, see into that what you will, but it seems to me there's no smoke without fire. I can be damn sure that I wouldn't want to be telling the British public that we've just struck oil on the eve of a referendum. Last thing I want you to know.
All right, let's go to the man in the middle in the stripe, the red stripes, or maybe the pink.
If there is a big oil find off Shetland and Scotland does become independent, will Shetland be allowed to go independent?
OK, I suspect it's a question for another day, sir. And we'll come to the man in the middle here. Yes.
Scotland seems to be the only country in the world that seems to be cursed for having oil. It's just
yes. So
no campaign keep putting it across as a negative thing. Okay. They just say it's so negative.
All right, Blair McDougall, I mean, you know, goodness knows, we're pointless trying to argue about how much is left, but some, you know, Oil and Gas UK industry body, between 15 and 24 billion barrels. It's quite a lot, isn't it? Isn't the gentleman right that it can't be a bad thing for Scotland?
I think we have a choice. We can have a generation of taxes coming out of the North Sea with oil, or we can have a generation of jobs. It's getting more expensive to get out of the ground. There has to be more and more money put into it. Both the White Paper and the UK Government have guaranteed about £20 billion of decommissioning costs to clean up all these wells as they come to the end of their lives. We've got a choice as to whether we spread the burden of the additional cost that's supporting that investment, that record investment that Angus is talking about, across 63 million people or across 5 million people. But can I just say on this conspiracy theory stuff, the idea is that in order to keep something secret, David Cameron flew to Shetland as the first Prime Minister to go to Shetland in a generation. While there, incidentally, he tweeted a photo of himself with a little Shetland pony. If this was some sort of low-key secret agent, he's the worst James Bond that we've ever had.
Okay,
we've got to make this decision on the basis of facts, not in fantasy.
Nicky Marr.
I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I don't know if David Cameron went or not, and frankly, I don't care.
He did go, I think.
It was well publicised.
There's an awful lot that I see on Twitter that I take with a big pinch of salt and just press delete. Yes, it may be more expensive to get our oil out of the ground, but I understand that the barrel price is going up. So, you know, that all is swings and roundabouts and matches. There's a huge emphasis on oil in this debate. Scotland does export other things as well and create other things as well. Food and drink, absolutely fantastic. So let's look at other industries too.
The MP from Murray is nodding, funnily enough. The woman here, yes.
Would it not be fair to say that oil is just really the cherry on the top for Scotland's economy? But more than that, would it not also be fair to say oil's been running out in the North Sea since the first barrel came out of the ground?
Okay. Thank you. And the man with the kilts.
Does neither side think that they should pay attention to the fact that oil is creating climate change and we should be running it down, not boosting it up?
Thank you, sir. OK, in 15 seconds, really quick.
Absolutely. We are blessed in Scotland not only to have had oil and gas. We are 1% of Europe's population with 25% of all of Europe's renewable resource. We have a great future, but let's make the most of it. The best way to do that is vote yes.
And similarly, very tight, please.
We absolutely have to be paying attention to that point, but the reason why we have to offer tax breaks, the reason why we have to accept less tax revenue is because it is better for us to be using the oil that we have in this country than importing it from all sorts of unstable regimes around the world. We need to make the best of that resource, and we can do so best within the United Kingdom.
Thank you very much. Let's take another question from Ian Finlayson. Ian Finlayson.
Whatever happens on September the 18th, I think, as we can see here, Scotland is a divided nation on the subject. What should be done to draw the country together, be it either a yes or a no vote, come the 19th of September?
OK. A reconciliation question. Nicky.
This is something that I'm very concerned about as well. To me, and I used to be a litigation solicitor, it's a bit like a husband and wife getting together and saying, I think we might divorce. What do you think? And they have all the mudslinging, all the discussions, all the negotiations about who's going to have the kids, who's going to take the dining room table, who's going to take the car. And then they decide, actually, after they've done this, and I never liked your mother anyway, they decide that they want to stay together. Whether it's a divorce or whether it's carrying on for the sake of the kids, I have no idea. And that does concern me, that there's been an awful lot of mudslinging, and we've seen a bit of it tonight. And I don't know where we move on, and I don't know how we move forward, but I think there will need to be a period of healing, whichever way it goes.
Blair McDougall, how does Scotland heal?
Well, I think whether it's Angus or I, who are either smiling or frowning, which way round it is, on the wee small hours of the 19th of September, whoever loses has got to accept this. Yeah, we've got to move on as a country after this, and we've got to all unite behind whatever the result is. I think Alex Salmond's right to say that this cannot be a referendum. There was an opinion poll this week saying that people thought that if there was a no vote or a yes vote, that should be it. And I think that's I think that's right. Well,
who said that? Sorry. Where are we? Oh, it's come down the front. Sorry, what's your point, sir?
I think you're referring to the Ipsos Mori poll. It actually
no,
said 61%.
YouGov poll.
Oh, sorry.
There's a YouGov poll. YouGov poll.
YouGov.
Sure. No,
61%
YouGov
of the respondents actually said that they did not think that should be the last referendum ever.
All right.
But what can I just say?
Yeah,
What I think we don't want is a situation like Quebec, where they had the Referendum, where it kept coming back and back and back again. I think whatever side of this debate we're on, we want it settled. We want it settled.
I want to come to Ken Stotts. Are you worried about this? Are you worried about where Scotland is in terms of our national discourse?
Well, I worry that it will create divisions.
So how do we heal?
But I don't think it's that's an end of it. I think it will be I honestly think if there is a no vote, there will be another referendum.
Why? And when?
Because it will always be on the table.
There were groans when
it will always be on the table. Scotland won't be. Well, I wanted to answer your question. I wanted to answer your question of Shetland. Now, I'd be all in favour of Shetland having independence, and there's no reason why it shouldn't. But I would rather imagine that it is in the structure of federalism.
All right, let's stay on this thought of division for a minute, and the man in the blue checks, on the edge.
Just going back to the thing about Boris Johnson earlier, what he said.
Can we stick to this?
Yeah, it's about just what he said about not devolving any further powers. Surely, if there was a no vote and we had to go back to business as normal, we still don't want to alienate almost 10% of the voting population by not doing anything.
OK, thank you. Let's come down to the woman in the front row. Yes.
OK, I see if it's a no vote, then we go back to Scotland not having a voice at all. When I look back at the last general election, there was one Conservative seat in Scotland. Danny Alexander's party chose to go with them, and now we're governed by a Tory government. That's not what I voted for. It's not what I want for my son either.
So this... The lady in the front, how are you going to reconcile with her? Sorry?
Does he feel any guilt to Scotland? I heard him say how much he loved Scotland, although he was voting no. Do you feel any guilt over the last few years?
I'm voting no because I do love Scotland. I'm voting no because I think that it is far better for everybody in this room.
But do you feel any guilt, she said?
No, I don't, because I think that we've done the right thing to sort out the economic mess in this country. But let me just say in answer to the question about reconciliation, because I think this is really important. I am a bit more optimistic than some of the other panellists about this question, because I think actually, as a country, we've been fortunate to have the opportunity to have a debate about our nation's future. And look, it's a good thing that there are strongly held views and that everyone can hear those strongly held views. Everyone can listen to them, and I appreciate the comments from Nikki and from others in the audience. But I think the crucial thing is that we have to accept the result of the referendum for a generation at least. Let's not have another independence referendum. And then if it's a no vote, from my point of view, making sure that we deliver on the further powers for the Scottish Parliament after the 2015 election is a crucial part of making sure that the UK works for Scotland.
Very briefly, we're out of time.
Very briefly, the rest of the world is watching what's happening in Scotland, and they're looking in awe. We are discussing this issue in television studios, in church halls like never before, over the family. We should be so proud that we are doing it. Let's keep the extremes in the social media to where they are. Let's respect the people on the other side of the argument. We are all equally proud of the country we live in, and I hope we make the right result. I hope it's a yes.
OK, thank you very much.
The others are no less proud or right for
working there. Thank you so much. Thank you very much. Well, there seems to be some friendship has broken out, patting each other on the back at the end. Our hour, I'm afraid to say, is up. 2 weeks tonight. We'll be in Edinburgh, followed by Aberdeen on the 3rd of September, and then Stirling on the Sunday before the referendum. It's getting close now. To apply to join our audience, search the web for BBC Referendum Debate. My thanks to the panel here this evening and to the audience. And from Inverness, a very good night.
Next tonight on BBC Two Scotland, what's at stake for the UK after the referendum? Andrew Neil explores the consequences in a moment.